Hello and welcome to the wrap-up session for Module 3. Thank you for your continued presence and participation. We know that this has not been an easy week. Many of you have expressed how challenging it has been, but also how insightful you have found this. So we are particularly pleased and thrilled with the way you have been engaging on both the Connect Forum and the Facebook Groups page. We've been asking and answering questions, inciting very interesting discussions, and supporting each other throughout the module. Please continue to connect on these platforms. During this week, we have taken a closer look at the education sector analysis, or ESA, which is the first phase of the ESP development. Indeed, the ESA consists of a robust photography of the entire education system, from pre-primary education to higher education, that looks at past and current trends in educational development based on evidence. It identifies the strengths and weaknesses of the system and their causes, including present and potential constraints or challenges. As such, the results of the education sector analysis are particularly relevant for future planning activities, as they offer the basis for identifying relevant policy objectives and strategies and for selecting appropriate priority programs. They also provide the required education and financial information for developing the subsector education simulation model, as well as to build the monitoring and evaluation framework, tools we will closely look at in modules 4 and 5, respectively. So, ensuring that the ESA adequately addresses key ESA-related issues is therefore critical. This module started with an inspirational video that gave you a glimpse into the education sector analysis and the importance to ensure that key stakeholders are part of its development process from the onset, an aspect we will further comment later in this wrap-up session. The animated PowerPoints and the module reader offered you an overview of the key areas of analysis for pre-primary that should be covered when conducting an ESA and how they could be analyzed. The process of conducting an ESA was also discussed, as well as challenges and practical consideration to overcome them. Among the activities that you had to conduct this week was, as usual, a quiz on the overall Module 3 content. We are very pleased to report that the average score on the quiz was 91%. This is great, given the complexity of the topic. A big congratulations to all of you. The data detective activity that many of you seems to have enjoyed, as well as the Champion Analysis ECE Access in Mookland activity, were meant to help you reflect on the type of information that you might need to gather to properly address key ECE issues and how this helps you to shape initial policy recommendations. Like each week, quite a number of you took part in the poll on the Facebook group forum. This week, we were asked to look at your own country's ESA or ESP and note if there was pre-primary data for certain categories of indicators related to access, equity, quality, and funding. The results were quite striking and have highlighted a harsh reality that seems to be prevalent in many of your countries and which is not really a surprise to us. The ECE subsector is facing an acute data gap. There is barely any information beyond global ECE enrollment and coverage data. Even gathering data by gender can be quite challenging in certain countries, not to mention by socioeconomic status, ethnic groups, disability status, to name a few of the critical equity dimensions. Without being able to track for these disparities, it will be very difficult to make the case for the more disadvantaged groups, who are the ones, at the end of the day, who could benefit the most from quality ECE services. There is also very little data available to assess the quality of schools' teaching and learning environments. At best, the Education Management Information System, the EMIS, is able to capture the pupil ECE teacher ratio or the percentage of ECE teachers that are qualified. but it rarely captures critical quality aspects related, for instance, to teacher behaviors and practices or to child-staff interaction, indicators that relate to quality process and that are crucial when analyzing quality. You can also observe that little critical analysis is available on the type of ECE curriculum used. To what extent is the curriculum culturally and age-appropriate and play-based? There is also very little information gathered on family and community participation. Parents, being at the front line, are children's first teachers and should be better supported in their role. As you may have read in the model reader, parental engagement in children's early learning activities at home enhances children's development and academic achievements and helps to create better transitions between home and school environments. Being able to better capture the home's dynamic is critical in order to put in place sound parental education programs. Another area where the ECE subsector faces a major data gap relates to funding. In many instances, the budget devoted to ECE is not captured or in an inadequate way. Indeed, it is common for ECE funding to be merged with the primary education budget. Additional analytical work is required to disentangle the share that goes to ECE from the share that goes to primary. In addition, gathering information on ECE household participation as well as donor funding is still an uphill battle. In countries where such information is available, we see that education spending is often not progressive. Higher education tends to get a higher share of the education budget than ECE, despite the higher social return that ECE brings. This way of funding education is even less equitable, as barely any children from the poorest family are reaching university. This reminds us that ultimately, ECE should be funded in priority by governments. This would require governments to increase domestic revenues, education budget, and or the share of the education budget going to ECE. This data gap remains a major hurdle to adequately analyze the ECE subsector's performance and efficiency and come up with recommendations that are based on robust evidence. Yet, this gloomy conclusion should not make us feel defeated. Already, by participating in this course, you are taking a step towards improving your country's ECE data collection. It is true that statistical data, generally derived from the EMIS system, forms the foundation for the sector diagnosis. The information managed by the EMIS, the Education Management Information System, is usually based on the school census questionnaire as a bare minimum. But it also encompasses human resources management records, inspection reports, test scores and assessment results, financial expenditures, special survey, etc. In many countries, growing attention is being given to the strengthening of the EMIS system in all of its major phases, including data collection, processing, management, storage, archiving, and extraction for analysis and dissemination to different types of audiences. This also concerns the ECE subsector. While still unideal, efforts have been made by many ministries of education to better capture ECE data through better recording of, for instance, non-public school data, be private, community-based, madrasa. In many countries, private schools are not obliged to complete the EMIS questionnaire. This leads to major underreporting of ECE enrollment, which is all the more critical considering that many countries do rely heavily on private ECE providers. Adequate legislation and enforcement are important in this area to ensure that all schools, regardless of their ownership, do provide a minimum set of information to the Ministry of Education for proper monitoring of ECE indicators for adequate planning. Efforts have also been made to ensure that data is being disaggregated by gender, location, and region. Some EMISs also try to capture disability, relying on more innovative approaches. Many data collection efforts in the past have used questions that are problematic. For example, asking if a child has a disability or asking if a child has one of a set of particular diagnoses. Another approach is to ask if a child is receiving special services. These type of questions all seriously under-identify children with disabilities and contain various biases. This approach is the basis of the UN Statistical Commission's Washington Group on Disability Statistics. A much better methodology that needs to be prompted is to take a functional approach to asking about disability. That is, to ask questions about difficulties a child may have doing a core set of activities. If a child has difficulty doing these things like saying, walking, and communicating, then she or he is at risk of not being able to fully participate in the education system. In other words, the focus is not on what the child has, but what the child can do. In recent years, we have also seen a growing number of countries assessing school readiness of children in pre-primary or at the entry of primary school. There are interesting survey tools that, beyond assessing primary school readiness, provide interesting information on the school and classroom teaching and learning environment, on the socio-economic background of the child, as well as on parental involvement in early development activities at home. Among the various existing tools, we can cite the MELCO, the ELA, or the IDELA. One of their strengths is that while addressing the various development areas that a child is expected to master at entry of primary, they do not only focus on cognitive skills, but also on language, motor, and social emotional skills. Special attention is provided to ensure that the tools are customized to local needs and realities to ensure adequateness and relevancy. Household survey also provide an interesting complement of information. The latest mix offers interesting modules on EC participation as well as parental involvement in early stimulation activities at home. It also offers a module on disability to better track disability patterns. By allowing one to compute enrollment coverage indicators and assessing parental involvement at home by different categories, including household socioeconomic level, ethnic groups, and disability statute, to name a few characteristics, household surveys are able to shed some light on key EC features. This is the first step to take when addressing an issue, making it visible. The ESA, as you have seen, draws on many types of data from various and heterogeneous sources. While statistical data generally forms the foundation for the sector diagnosis, information extends beyond statistical data and should also include documents such as EC policy documents, EC studies, research, reports, project documents, and so on, that are containing both quantitative and qualitative information relevant to the EC subsector. Such documents are particularly useful for giving meaning to some of the statistical findings and more generally for providing a more in-depth understanding of what is going on in the sector. Unfortunately, few ministries of education have a well-organized documentation center in which such reports and documents can be easily identified. This means that garnering this type of information often requires a special effort and can be very time-consuming. One important message we would like to convey before closing this issue of the data gap is for you to use the ESA as an opportunity to flag any critical data and information gaps related to EC. Indeed, the data collection and analysis phases of the ESA represent a good opportunity to assess what data and information exist, its quality, and what data is missing. It is a chance to discuss with relevant stakeholders, especially the EMIS team, strategies to come up with quality EC information and analytical frameworks in the short, medium, and long terms, including by making better use of and strengthening existing data collection and M&E mechanism, and provide recommendation for improvement to be incorporated into ESP priorities. Another issue that many of you raised on the various forums is the issue of data quality. It is a really critical area when dealing with data. Indeed, data to support sound evidence-informed decision-making needs to be of quality and relevant. The greater the quality of data, the more planners, managers, and decision makers will trust it and therefore will use it. At the same time, greater data use will generate a demand for transparent and accountable decision-making planning, monitoring, and evaluation, and will be used in feedback loops, communication, and outreach to all education stakeholders. Data quality and data use tend to reinforce each other. When conducting an ESA, assessing the quality of data at hand is the first task to undertake once the data is collected. It consists of checking for invalid, incorrect, or inconsistent data. Concretely speaking, it entails looking at two major aspects. The coverage, for instance, are all schools recorded, regardless of their ownership? We have already highlighted above the issue of some school censuses not capturing private school data. Second, the quality in the reporting. Is the information properly recorded? Are we observing values that seem aberrant? Are there a lot of missing values? Too many missing values will make the indicator unreliable and the related information useless. Triangulating data is a technique often used to assess data quality. It consists of using alternative sources of information and comparing the various results obtained. Let's illustrate this using a concrete example. Let's say you want to compute the gross enrollment ratio for pre-primary. To compute the GR, one usually uses the preschool enrollment data from the EMIS and the related school age population from the population projections provided by the National Bureau of Statistics. Population data in many low-income countries is often rife with inconsistencies, so the computed indicator might not be that accurate. Alternative sources of data consist of population projection data from the United Nations Population Division, and more globally, the GR computing using household surveys. Household surveys present the advantage of providing information on both enrollment and the school age population from the same source, the parents. They tend to provide a better estimate than administrative data. Yet, a problem that might occur in countries where EC enrollment is weak is that the number of observations might be too limited to come up with a statistically representative GR. Another drawback is that household surveys are not conducted on a yearly basis and cannot be used to monitor progress on a regular basis. So, once the various indicators have been used, the national technical team should be discussing them and select the indicator that is deemed the most reliable given all the data issues analyzed. This step is essential to ensure that data is robust and credible, and particularly important in contexts where data is dubious or poor. Another critical area that came up during your discussion, and what I would like to highlight here, was related to the process of conducting an ESA. As we are tending to say, the process is as important as the product itself. Some of you who have taken part to the development of an ESA know how this process can also be challenging. Being government-led, and because of its technical nature, while remaining participatory, the ESA has for a long time been the business of a core technical team, often coordinated by the planning department head. In recent years, the ESA is tending to cover in more depth all education and training subsectors and new theme areas. Additional stakeholders have been taking part in the activity. As far as EC is concerned, it will be very important that key stakeholders from public and non-public providers working at both national and subnational levels, including representatives from parents and communities, be part of the activity from the onset. These bear many benefits. First, it allows the gathering of people that are not used to working together and help to build a common vision on the characteristic of the subsector and its main challenges, ultimately allowing countries to come up with a shared vision of possible EC policies and strategy. It also helps get more insight on the EC subsector, as each actor is coming with their own share of knowledge. As such, it represents an extraordinary opportunity for capacity development by learning from the various stakeholders. And last but not least, it favors ownership of results, easing future implementation by fostering commitment. Yet, while this can bring additional coordination challenges, having a variety of key EC representatives is an approach that should be fostered and best discussed with the ESP coordinator. There are also other opportunities to bring on board key EC actors. It is common practice at the end of the EC development to gather a wide variety of actors during a 1 to 2 day consultative workshop. During this workshop, ESA results, presentation, and discussion session allow for adequately incorporating stakeholders' views and properly finalizing the ESA. Before closing this wrap-up session, I would like to mention that we will be posting by Thursday some general feedbacks related to both the detective activity and the ESA MOOCland activity to help you individually assess your work. Well, Module 3 is finally coming to an end. It was a true pleasure being your lead instructor this week. Again, and on behalf of the whole EC MOOC team, I would like to reiterate our congratulations to you and our joy in seeing you so dedicated and passionate. Today, Module 4 opens. It will bring you deeper in the ESP journey. So stay alert and bon courage.